Let me ask you something. Have you ever really stopped to think about who's running the internet? I mean, who's actually pulling the strings behind the screen? Well, in this explainer, we're going to pull back that curtain and find out the real answer. So let's just dive right in, right? The big question. Who is really in charge of this massive global thing that we all depend on every single day? Is there one person, a secret committee, a single company? The answer, well, it's way more interesting than you might think.
So your first thought might be, well, it's the government, obviously. And sure, they can definitely order a website to be blocked inside a country. We've all seen that happen. But let's be honest, we also know there are ways around those blocks. That's hardly controlling the entire internet, right?
Okay, fine. So it's not the government. What about the huge tech companies? You know, the ones that have all our data and run the biggest platforms? Nope, not them either. Think about it. Anybody, and I mean anybody, can build a website. They can't just stop you. They don't own the internet itself. All right, one last guess. It's got to be your internet service provider, right? The company you literally pay every month for access? Wrong again. Their power is pretty limited too. If one of them gives you bad service or cuts you off, you can usually just switch to another one. They don't have the final say. Okay, so to get to the real answer, we've got to start peeling back the layers of the internet, kind of like an onion. And the very first layer starts with something you type every single day, a website address. Let's take a super familiar address, like www.youtube.com. It really has two main parts. You've got YouTube, that's the domain name, and then you've got .com, that's called the top-level domain. And if you want your own spot on the web, you have to buy one of these unique names. But who are you actually buying it from? So there's actually this whole chain of command for how a domain name gets from the powers that be all the way down to you. It's kind of like a pyramid. Right at the very top, you've got this organization called ICANN. They're the big bosses. They sell the rights to things like .com and .org to companies called registries, who are like the wholesalers. Then those registries sell them to the companies you've actually heard of, like GoDaddy. They're the retailers. And finally, they sell the name to you. It's a whole system. So who is this ICANN anyway? Well, it's a nonprofit based out in Los Angeles, and they basically get to decide what top-level domains can even exist. The fact that we have .com or .gov at all, that was their call. Now, because it started in the US, its global power is always a hot topic. But does managing the names make them the god of the internet? Nah, not even close. Because the internet is way, way more than just a bunch of names.
Right, so names are one piece of the puzzle. But here's the thing we always forget. The internet isn't some magical cloud. It's a real physical thing. So now let's look at the actual wires and boxes that make it all work.
When you get right down to it, the internet is just a bajillion computers all hooked up to each other. Your phone, my laptop, massive data servers, all of it is physically connected by a giant global net of wires. And the journey your data takes? It's mind-blowing. It shoots through these huge fiber optic cables running under the actual oceans to get from one continent to another. Then it hits land, gets routed through cell towers and local lines, and finally, your ISP delivers it that last little bit right to your screen. Now, because the ISPs handle that last mile delivery, they do have some power, for sure. They can be told to block certain sites, and whether they can speed up or slow down some data is the whole fight behind net neutrality. But here's the key. That control isn't total. As we're about to see, their blocks are surprisingly easy to get around. Okay, so we've got the names, we've got the physical cables. Now it's time for the final and maybe the most important piece of this whole puzzle, the technical glue that holds it all together. Think of it as the internet's master address book. So check this out. Every single thing connected to the internet, your phone, your smart TV, every website server, it all has a unique number. It's called an IP address, and it works exactly like a phone number. It's how all these devices find each other in this giant global network. Here's the problem, though. We humans, we're good with words, like drupathy.com. But remembering a long string of numbers like that? No way. Computers? They're the total opposite. They only understand the numbers, the IP address. So how do we make these two different languages talk to each other? Well, that's where the magic happens. It's called DNS, the Domain Name System. And it's basically the internet's giant super-fast phone book. You type in a website name, and the DNS instantly looks up the right IP address, the right phone number, so your computer knows which server to connect to. It's the ultimate translator. Okay, now this is the really cool part. This is how ISPs usually block a website. They just go into their own phone book, their DNS, and erase the entry for that site. Poof, it's gone. But, and this is a big but, you don't have to use their phone book. You can just hop into your settings and tell your computer to use a public one, like Google's famous 8.8.8.8. And just like that, you're using a different phone book, and presto, the site is often unblocked. Okay, let's take a breath. We've looked at the names, the physical wires, and the technical address book. We have all the clues. Now we can finally put it all together and answer that one big question we started with.
So, after all of that, who actually controls the internet? And the answer is nobody. And at the same time, everybody. I know, it sounds like a riddle, but it's the absolute truth, and it's what makes the internet so incredible. See, the real power of the internet, its secret sauce, is that it is decentralized. There's no single person in a control room, no kill switch. The power is spread out across all those layers we talked about, and across millions of people and companies all over the world, all working together. And the most amazing part of this whole design, it means you can be a part of it. You can literally own your own little corner of the internet. It's as simple as these 3 steps. You buy a name, you rent a little bit of server space to put your website files, and then you just tell your name where to point. That's it.
Yeah, that's right. You don't have to just scroll and consume on this network. You can be a creator, a builder. So the real question isn't who controls the internet anymore. The real question is, now that you know you can own a piece of it, what are you going to build?